undying support that he's given to all the boards, not only ours, but all the boards with his knowledge and expertise. So again, Larry, thank you. It's greatly appreciated.
Dave, thank you for the acknowledgement. I appreciate that. But everybody worked on it, so.
Yeah. But I've given a lot of thought to this, and just as we open up the meeting, I don't know, Larry's going to give us a synopsis or whatever, anyways, and we're going to vote on it, but given it a lot of thought, I mean, I've over the years, I've testified before the legislature on this topic, racial relief, and I just always wanted to guarantee that it was direct supervision for the apprentices on the job, and not where you have one journey person and 2, 3, 4, and I mean, I've seen it where there's been multiple. It's been an imbalance, and I just always want to guarantee that the apprentices being properly supervised. And with that, I would just say I don't want to make it easy on the contractor to violate the rules. That being said, I just want to stand by my old beliefs, and like I say, I don't want to be a hypocrite and relax the standards. So I'll turn it over to Larry, and Larry can give us his what the other boards have agreed to, or what's the majority, the consensus is, if that's the way you want to,
Well, actually, I'd be happy to do that, but I'm gonna let John do it because John does such a great job in presentation, and I'm here mainly to back up anything and support and explain any reasons why something is. So, John, you got 2 minutes and we're done.
That's it. All right. Timer is on.
The clock is marked. Time to start.
All right. Good morning again, everybody. So again, we're here meeting today, special board meeting for reviewing the racial relief as outlined in Section 2 of Public Act 2547. Over the last few months, so a little history on it again, it was voted in July. In July, we started talks with the board. Shortly thereafter, we started talks with the board chairs because, again, it was established that Section 2 had a deadline of February 1st, 2026. Mr. Valeries, along with the other board chairs, has spent countless hours meeting with the department, trying to work together to establish documents to put together a policy, which included meetings with the Attorney General's office to make sure that everything was moving forward properly. That being said, the board chairs were able to put together something that they believed was a policy that all 4 boards could stand behind. So I'll just jump in quickly, and Rochelle, if you don't mind, if you could just share the documents as we go along. But the big thing for these employers or the sponsors that are going to be putting forward the application is going to be substantiating good cause. So it's going to be on the sponsor to put forward why it is that they are in need of racial relief. And again, the racial relief that would be coming before the board would be for those that are seeking 8 or more apprentices. So if a company currently has more than 8 and or the total number of apprentices that they're seeking is greater than 8, they would complete an application, and each one of those applications greater than 8 would go before the respective board. So one of the first documents that Rochelle's sharing is in the application package. It's going to have a series of questions. One of the questions is that one of the action items is that they have to upload this document specifically. This document is available on our website currently. The sponsor or the employer will put this document together outlining the name and the license number and the license type for each licensee they currently have. This is going to be a licensee that's going to be available, to Dave's point prior to opening up, that's going to be available for daily direct supervision. So this should not be an individual that is going to be sitting in the office the majority of their time. This should be an individual that is going to, again, be available for daily direct supervision. That is adding to the number of licensees that the company currently has, in addition to identifying the name of the apprentice, along with what year that apprentice might be in, because that information would be beneficial to the board for establishing that good cause. Because again, if you have a fourth and or a fifth year apprentice, how long should the ratio relief process be available to them for? So in the application, there's certain criteria that they have to answer going down. The criteria consist of, have you had an issue with wage and workplace? Have you had an issue with the Department of Consumer Protection? Have you sought and or attempted to hire from the technical high school system? So the individuals that are currently in the technical high school system would count as a pre-apprentice. And going back to the document that Rochelle just had up, that pre-apprentice title is only applicable to students of the technical high school system. So what happens, because the way that the cycles run within the technical high school, a junior and a senior student are never in shop at the same time. So a junior student would be available to an employer, and then when that junior student goes back to their academic cycle, the senior student would then fulfill. So a pre-apprentice is, again, only a title utilized within the technical high school system. But a sponsor or an employer does have to, per the Public Act, have to seek to attempt to hire from the technical high school system. That being said, and I'll just note the topic that Dave had brought up specifically around that, the technical high school system does not have, or the chairperson, I apologize, the technical high school system does not have a fire protection program. So where it would be beneficial for that employer or sponsor to potentially reach out to maybe a plumbing piping shop that might have a student that's interested in fire protection, the chairperson said it's not really applicable to. So it is part of the law. They do have to reach out, but again, it's not going to be weighed upon heavily, from my understanding, from the chairperson, because again, the technical high school system specifically does not have a fire protection program. I just want to verify that. Any comment on that one, Dave, before I go on?
No comment.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So
Thank you.
moving on, the employer, the sponsor, completes the application. They attest to the questions that are asked. They identify the number of apprentices that they're seeking, and they have to complete this document here, which again identifies the list of the licensees and the current apprentices the company has. From here, the employer or the sponsor will be notified that the application was received, and the application would then go to the board for review at the next board meeting or within 90 days. So there might be specific cases that a special meeting needs to be had just to meet that 90-day deadline.
John?
If we could, yep, sorry.
John, quick question. This, just to clarify, this only pertains over 8, correct?
Oh, for only over 8 and or in a situation under 8, when there is a disciplinary action that was identified by the employer. So when a company is seeking less than 8, those applications are approved at the departmental level, but they're answering relatively the same questions that you could see that Rochelle has displayed now. And if you look at 59 and 60, if a sponsor or employer identifies having had an action taken against them by DCP and or by the Department of Labor, Wage and Workplace, they would that would be an automatic. All discipline reviews go before the board. So, but besides that, the under 8s are approved at the departmental level. So once the application is complete, it's received, the department would notify, and in the event that it falls within a 90-day, does not fall within the next board meeting, a special meeting might have to be heard. The employer or the sponsor would have the opportunity to come before the board to answer any questions that the board might have. The board chairs had reviewed and put together, and again, it's a voluntary script. This can be modified at any time. by the board, but just to keep the boards consistent in the questions that they're asking. These are essentially the questions the board members would ask and or look to have answered from a employer or a sponsor when they come before the board presenting their good cause for seeking relief to the ratio as it's stated within statute. So I'll just give you guys a minute to review this and if you have any questions.
I have one thing. I'm not sure why I never thought of this during the whole process, but if somebody's to ask for relief, I haven't heard anything up to, what you've said now. Is there any checks and balances? What's to say they submit everything, they have the licenses, and then they get these extra apprentices, but then they lay off or journeymen decide to quit, they fall behind, and now they have all these apprentices, and there's really possibly not enough supervision.
That's a great question, Wayne. The employer and the sponsor need to know that, this racial relief is granted to them by the board. They're also attesting that this is the information being provided at the time of the application. If the status was to change, like you just indicated, let's just take a scenario where several journey persons quit the company for whatever the reason. If that changes the program, that they can no longer maintain that one-to-one job site ratio, they need to contact the Department of Labor and figure that out with the Department of Labor while they're attempting to try to resolve the situation for the discrepancy in the licenses. Now, if this matter goes unaddressed and or they have violations as a result of such, the board has the right to have the company come back in, review, and to remove that remove the racial relief from the company, reverting back to the hiring ratio as identified within statute. So again, the statute hasn't changed. The racial relief is granted by the board, but they're attesting that that's the information. And I believe one of the questions within the transcript, if you go back up to the last question, I think it is Rochelle.
I'm sorry, what do you need me to share?
I think it's the last question. Or there was a statement that was on the transcript there. Okay, there was a statement in there, but essentially when the board closes out their review of the application, they're noting, the board should be noting that any changes that you need to work with the Department of Labor apprenticeship rep and change your policies. Again, this is never, to the chairperson's point, this racial relief was never meant to circumvent the one-to-one job site ratio. That doesn't change. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, Wayne.
Well, just on my personal level with the position I hold, I know it's very difficult to even get DCP on a job. They're overwhelmed, understaffed. So this could go on forever unnoticed, and you could file a complaint that never gets viewed, or it's too late when it is, that job's done. The typical issues that we talk about during our quarterly meetings. It's just scary that, and I'm not saying every contractor's gonna violate the system, and it might be a good thing for the contractors that want to do it correctly, but there's a lot of bad actors out there that are going to abuse the system and the apprentices, I believe.
Right. If you're aware of it, and I would have to have my legal just double check on that. Larry, I don't know if you know off the top of your head, but if you become aware of it, because this is a program that's run by the board and it's a board action, I believe that you could review such and or call a company in. And again, I would revert back to my legal just to answer that question. But again, your boots on the ground. Sometimes you're made aware of things. If you're aware of a company, I don't think that there's anything stopping that. Dave, you had a question?
Yeah, so this is just the, what you're saying previous, it's an honor system. That if they, like what Wayne's scenario, if journeymen quit, get laid off, and now they fall out of balance, the onus is on the contractor to notify DCP that we've we're not meeting the requirements.
Well, not
Correct.
necessarily even DCP. The board is only reviewing the ratio relief application as it's presented and attested to at that time of application. Once the board makes their determination, that goes over to the Department of Labor.
All right, so
So-
Department of Labor, but
The Department of Labor still has that responsibility. And again, if the Department of Labor reps find that there is individuals being, the individuals that have left, if the contractor record changed, whatever the issue has, and they notify us. Again, if this was a part of a ratio relief process, this will go back before the board.
Hey, John.
Yep.
Just a thought on that point that was brought up about all of a sudden the makeup of the company's licenses and apprentices get out of whack. I would, and this is something we should discuss probably. I would think that if a complaint came in on that, and it has to do with the ratio modification, it has nothing to do with any other violations out there, that that respective board should be notified, and then possibly we could call in that contractor because we have a complaint and see if we can verify that. And then we can take action on this program as a occupational board.
well, here's a problem with that, Larry. How many complaints do you see? A lot of these complaints get AVC'd or,
No,
You know.
no, Dave, what I'm saying is it doesn't, it comes into the department or comes in through the labor department as a complaint. And we get notified, it doesn't end up going over there toward the normal, like Janita's department. Okay, so that it comes right through the board and we can take immediate action. That's something we need to discuss, and it's a good point. It's not any different than it was before, as far as being on the honor system. But at the same time, this is a board program, if you will, I'm going to call it. And we have more, honestly, we have more, but we have authority over it. And as stated in the legislation, our decisions are final. They're final decisions. They're not, there is no appeal process to that as we see it right now. So I think if it comes in, whether it comes to the labor department or consumer protection, it comes to the respective board, I think the board's chairs would want to call a very quick meeting soon with that sponsor and address it. But I think it's a good, excellent point, Wayne, that you bring up.
yeah, but how do we get notified, Larry? You know, that's the thing, the communication
Thank you.
lines.
We'll establish a communication. I believe what Larry just indicated is correct. That's my belief also. I just want to run it through internally with DCP legal, and then go from there. But to Larry's point, the board actions are final. So because this is a board program as identified in section 2, there's nothing stopping it from coming back before the board if an issue arises. I will work internally with the OC enforcement unit and notify Janita that any case that come in that have to do with a approved ratio relief program, that I need to be notified so I can communicate that back to the board chair. So
Tony's got his
that's
hand
not a
up.
problem. Yep, go ahead, Tom.
Tony,
I was just gonna add, with everything that's been said, I would think if it's an agreement between the board and the,
Sponsor,
right, is that the board would have the right to rescind that agreement, or,
that's correct.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's correct.
And revert back to the hiring ratio. So the hiring ratio didn't
Previous
change. The statute remained the same. So they would have to change their policies until such time that they put a new application in. And they would have to come back before the respective board and substantiate their good cause. And Rochelle, if we could show the violation page after, but because that will carry us right into that. But Kevin, you had a question?
Yeah, John, if the board were to quote, pull the relief based on a problem with a contractor, I'm just asking, not to say that there should be, but is there an appeal process for the contractor to pursue after that, or is it you pull it, you're done?
Board action's final.
Okay, thank you.
It gotta be a court. They could always take you to court, just like the license review.
Yeah,
Correct?
no, I'm just, when we have a fire code modification and OSFM denies the modification, we go to codes and standards. So I didn't know if there was an appeal process. That's all. I'm just asking. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah. Rochelle, if we could just share the violation table quickly. And Lear, if you don't mind, I'll kick this one to you because with the history of where this came from.
Okay, sure. This is a suggested violation and penalty table that I put together. And it basically, to some extent mimics the MOU violation table. And this is suggested or recommended, but you can modify this any which way you want. So as an example, if we go to the top of it, the very first offense, okay, for example, your example, is that the right one? Yeah, the first offense right now, like failure to display the license, okay, they would actually deduct, well, for this program, we would deduct one apprentice position. That's allowed if the violation was within the last 3 years. If it repeats and you get to this, or even the first violation on something that's more serious, you'll see I put in right there, yes. You would deduct 2 apprentice positions when you're looking at the overall number of apprentices. I think it's important also to note when determining the number of apprentices that the total number the sponsor could have. Okay. And I've always kind of used this when I was doing the racial reliefs at the labor department. I would take the number of licenses that they had. Okay. And even then they would include those that weren't really available for training, in my opinion. But I would take the number of field licenses, okay, and I would take it discounted by 15%. Okay, that 15% actually created a buffer for a situation where the journeyman calls out sick that day, or he's on vacation, or what have you. Because if we go 100%, you automatically build in violations, which we're not trying to do that. And then from that, I would deduct any DCP or DOL violations, okay, that there were, and then that would give you the total available apprentices, okay? That's now just the total available. By the same token, the guy may, on the form, he has to indicate that he's willing to put whatever number of apprentices you grant him to work within 45 days. So the contractor is not just building a library or an inventory of apprentices, okay? They can apply it as often as they want, but because we've seen people out there that ask, and this is something that was developed through, I think, DOL by default of the contractor. They would ask for 10, let's say, and they would get 6 maybe. So after a while, the contractor said, well, we're going to keep asking for more and more and more because they're going to discount us. And this is to hopefully tailor that down somewhat so that they're not over asking by us requiring them to put these people back to work within 45 days. that we grant, if we grant 3 or 4 or 6, whatever it is. And one other thing is that in the forms, it does ask them that once you laid off an apprentice for whatever purpose, that confirm that you filed the proper notification to Department of Labor, the apprenticeship division, indicating that you've laid them off and why. Okay. And then as you're looking for new, hire another apprentice, that you've reached back out to that person that you laid off, or persons that you've laid off, and try to recruit them back. Now, if they're staying out there on unemployment, well, then they're available. If they've gone somewhere else, that's something that the contractor can't control. But we're trying to keep the apprentices that start a program to get through a program, okay? Because otherwise otherwise we're still creating a situation where we've got that so-called bad contractor out there that is just grabbing some extra hands because he got a little push on a job maybe, and then he's getting rid of the people. We don't want that. Yeah, that's the point I want to make, is that it was in Public Act 2547. Just forgot what I was going to say. My mind was going to go over. I had something else on it. It'll come back to me. I'm sorry.
It might have been within 2547 and identified that if an employer has terminated an apprentice, that they have to attempt to rehire that apprentice prior to offering that position to a new employee. So
Right.
they do have to attempt to hire, but how they terminated that employee from service could be something that they could bring up before the board. Because if the employer terminated the apprenticeship because the individual just wasn't a good fit in that company for whatever the reason, they're not required to bring that one apprentice back if they were essentially let go for other reasons. But if they were let go for a lack of work, that lack of work would call that they have to at least attempt to hire that previous apprentice back first before trying to hire a new apprentice. I don't know if that's where you're going with that one, Blair.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly my point. Thank you.
So there was a lot of time spent on this. Oh, sorry, Wayne, go ahead.
Well, I'm glad that was brought up because, I've personally identified a very large sprinkler contractor, and I get the same story from every apprentice I interview. They get to that 6-month mark where they're supposed to get an evaluation and the raise, and they're all sitting down meeting with me. And it's like they're starting these kids with false hope that they're going to have a career. And I was just going to bring that up too. And Larry, you hit it, was they should some way have to reach out to anyone that was laid off for lack of work or something like that. I like that part that's in there. Thank you.
And I mean, this Public Act 2547. I mean, I've heard from people in the on the electrical side, the contractors, a couple of them, that says that because they all wanted a 1-to-1 ratio. Okay, we all know that. Okay, and that's not, the 1-to-1 ratio is only going to happen on the job site. And I would never support, even as an open shop contractor, I would not, and I've told them this, I would not support a 1-to-1 ratio, hiring ratio, because there are times that things happen. Somebody's out sick, the wife's got to do something and they got to stay home. That all of a sudden that journey person's no longer available. Plus, that's why I put the 15% reduction in there for the situation where, because they've come back and said, well, we can take somebody from the office and they can go out and supervise. It's not the same thing as having a field person that normally is out in the field supervising and teaching the apprentice. So yes, I can be tough on my own people, and I will be tough on my own people, because one of my biggest pet peeves over the years has been when an apprentice comes before the licensing board with an application that's, we have to review. And he says, well, I worked for company ABC for all these years, and this company over here, XYZ, for all these years. I mean, I've got the hours and whatnot, but they're not through a registered program. And you gotta turn the guy down. That is the most hardest, that's one of the hardest things I think the board members and the chairman have to do with their jobs. Only because the contractors that they were working for took advantage of them from a standpoint of needing help, whether it was for cleaning up, I don't care what it was for, or whether it was for reduced wages, et cetera. I mean, we've got history on contractors out there that have taken money, kickback, I'm gonna call kickback money from even license holders to be on let's say, a prevailing rates job, okay? And to take that out of their retirement funds, that pardon my language, guys, but that's all BS. That you're a contractor, you're a businessman. All you gotta do is follow the rules. The rules are fair if everybody follows them. But those that want to break the rules, you don't have a lot of sympathy for. And you probably see some of that in some of this program.
That's what we're trying to prevent. I mean, because the honest people are going to always play by the rules. It's the I don't know, 5%, 2% out there that no matter what, they're always trying to cut some corner. And like I say, over the years, different positions, I testified before the legislature because this ratio relief has come up. I mean, it's finally hit a point where it's being relaxed quite a bit. I mean, the only guarantee we have is that 85% caveat there where they have to document. They can't exceed that 85%, which in most cases will guarantee that the apprentice is going to be supervised, have direct supervision of a journeyman on the job. So.
Dave, as you know, over the years, I've been trying to figure out ways to address this ratio issue, and like I said before, the idea of having a 1-to-1 hiring ratio doesn't work. It doesn't work, period. You don't have to be a brain surgeon to figure that out.
No.
But just an interesting side comment that, and it just happened to happen this way. Public Act 2547, which is what this is titled. 25 is the year of the Public Act went into effect. 47 is the 47th piece of legislation that the governor signed. But for me, it's significant because 47 is also the year I was born. So it's kind of unique and nice, and it's easy one for me to remember. So I got a little something out of this anyway.
So I don't know if the board has any questions on anything that was presented. So again, just sorry.
I'll add one more thing. That's what I was going to add. Remember, within the public act, the boards can revise their policies once a year, only once a year. So if we see something, we should look at on an annual basis, meeting, seeing if we come up with any problems, and see if we can informally agree to make some changes if they're necessary to improve the program.
I'd just like to make the board aware, the fire board aware that this doesn't, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Mesner, but this doesn't cover all the occupational boards. I think the elevator and glazers are exempt from this.
Yes, so the way 2547 specifically called out plumbing and piping, heating, cooling and piping, fire protection, and electrical. The elevator union was never a component of the
MOU.
hiring ratio in statute as identified. And the glaziers were, I think the license type was came after the creation of the hiring ratio. But yes, it's only impacting those 4 boards, not the full 6 occupational license types.
I guess I'll ask, you know, I mean, other than, do they have a stronger lobby or what's, why wasn't this across the board, all occupational licenses?
Essentially, all that means is they are not required to adhere to the hiring ratio by statute. So the elevator board and the glazer board, by not being specifically called out within the statute for the hiring ratio, has and will be able to maintain a 1-to-1 job site ratio. They were never required to meet the hiring ratio. So they were able to maintain a 1-to-1 job site ratio from day one. So the hiring ratio was only applicable to the 4 boards that were identified.
I
Dave,
just wanted the board to be aware of that because, I mean, I've been on some of the discussions that I don't know if they were aware of that.
Dave, I think this is the way I look at it is if you remember when the MOUs came out back when Jonathan Harris was commissioner, and the 4 boards that we're talking about right now, electrical, plumbing, heating, sprinkler, all signed onto that. Okay, elevator refused to sign on to it. They never signed on to the MOU.
Yeah, he sat in on the first couple meetings, and then he just adios.
Yeah. And then as far as the glaziers go, I believe, and I don't know this for a fact, but I believe when the glass board was first developed and initiated, it was when they were doing auto glass, okay?
Mhm.
And then they expanded and started doing flat glass, which now
Correct.
put more into our fields and was never picked up there either. And of course, they're not going to volunteer to do any of this unless they have a reason to. But
And just for clarity, the MOU, the glazing board, just for the fire board, did sign on to the MOU. So
That's right.
they are part of the MOU process. It's only the elevator board that did not sign on to that.
I wasn't trying to take away. I just wanted to make the board members here that may not have been privy to that information or knew that, you know, they weren't, those 2 other boards weren't included. That's all. I just want to make them aware of it. That this only covered the 4 boards.
Yeah. But
So, okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
that's all right. I'm sorry for stepping on you. To Chairman Valerie's point, again, if there is issues that do come about, essentially the policy that the boards are adopting and what we have before you today for motion and vote is really, it's the sponsor substantiating good cause is the board's policy. And they're substantiating the good cause by completing the application as put forward and supplying the Excel document identifying the licensees and apprentices. That's essentially the policy. The transcript is just for consistency so that the questions asked at the electrical board are essentially the same questions that are asked at the fire board, so that there's no discrepancies within what a sponsor might be asked, because we may have situations where we have the same sponsor coming across different boards seeking ratio relief, because we have obviously companies that are out there engaging in more than one occupational type. Same holds true with the violation table, so that if there was a deduction in the number of apprentices granted, that it stays consistent between the boards. So where 2547 was written, that each board was to come up with its own policy. The four board chairs did spend time to try to put this together so that they could move forward with essentially one policy that shows that there is a unification between the four boards and that there's essentially they're all abiding by the same criteria when reviewing again the violations and reviewing the good cause substantiated by that employer. So, but I
So
don't
if there is an issue in the future, the policy can be amended.
amended, changed, yep. And I would recommend that, again, after we vote today, assuming which way the fire board goes, maybe 6, 8 months in, we get the four board chairs to sit down and kind of evaluate. So if we do have changes that look to that we're looking to modify, that we can start to make those modifications ahead of time. So when the opportunity comes, that we can make those modifications and put it out there.
All right, does anybody on the fire board have any further questions? Put it to a vote. I know Tony's got a appointment. I want to include him in the vote, so. Anybody have any further questions? I guess I'll entertain a motion to accept the policies that were presented today and either to approve or deny.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. All right, so everybody's aware of what the policies are, and I would say the one fail-safe factor is the 85%, but I mean, it's possible that again, in my expertise, I know the industry's changed over the years. I see that I saw this, or I see this as affecting, say, the electrical board and maybe the plumbing and heating board more than the fire board, although Wayne has a better grip on it out there and sees what's going on as far as fire protection goes. And I'm sure anybody would want to get an inexpensive crew. That's what we're trying to prevent. I mean, to have a lopsided crew of apprentices to journeymen. So that being said, any other comments? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, passed unanimously. So there we go. We've got it. We've sealed the deal and
Stay on top of it.
Again.
So
say again?
just have to stay on top of it.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Right.
You'd think in this day and age, like, you just hit a keystroke and you see where, somebody who's employed or what, I mean, you got to, it's not a lot of detective work out there, like footwork. It's a lot can be done on a computer. I mean, there's records kept on, whether it's employment records, tax records or whatever, it can be followed fairly easy, but it takes somebody doing their job and due diligence. So, I mean, like I say, Tony, yes, they have to stay on top of it. And we'll, 6 months from now, it'll be,
Put us
we'll
on the
review.
clock. We'll go out there.
I can't hear you, Tony.
I said, put us on the clock. We'll go out there. We'll go out and check.
Well, I could tell you a story. I remember, before I was on the board, even, remember stopping by a job and they were out of ratio. Matter of fact, they didn't, when I asked, they were licensed or whatever, the guy, the foreman was reaching for his wallet and he says, "Are you from the state?" And he says, "No, I'm not from the state." And I said, "I live in the state." So the wallet went back into his hip pocket. I said, "But if you'd like, I'll have somebody from the state here tomorrow." And then he showed me his license. But in irony, there was 2 licensed journeymen and 3 apprentices on the job. So they were out of ratio. So, but anyway, so I thank everybody for their attendance today and see everybody think was it February we have our next meeting?
It's definitely February. Rochelle, you have that date handy?
Yep, February 26th.
Okay,
Thank
and that's a Zoom, it's a Zoom meeting. So hope to see everybody then and, you know, Tony, I hope you're doing well and, you know,
Hanging in there.
hanging in there. Okay.
Everyone
boy.
take care and hunker down for the weekend.
Yeah.
It's like a good storm coming.
Gonna get snowed in.
Yeah.
That's what they tell me.
All
So,
right, take care all.
all right. And again, my thanks to Larry. Thank you.
Oh, we
Appreciate
have
all
to
your,
adjourn, right?
say again?
We have to adjourn.
We have to, yeah. I was just thanking Larry one more time because Larry's
Yeah,
Larry's
thanks.
put in a ton of work on this. So thanks again.
No
Motion
problem.
for adjournment?
So moved.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting's
Hey, Dave.
adjourned at 9:47.
Gee, Dave, I happen to notice your board has no problem voting quickly on adjournments. My board just sits there and looks at me and say, why? Not really. That's the hardest.
All right,